It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 30, looking at the groups and teams of the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup. This episode is looking at Group D, USA, Haiti, Trinidad Tobago, and Saudi Arabia. Here we go! It's the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada, Series 30. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Connor, and today we are looking at Group D for the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup tournament. This group is made up of the United States, Haiti, Trinidad and Tobago, and Saudi Arabia.
Right, and just a note on where we're at in the media casts here. Series 21 to 27 deals with the World Cup 2026 qualifying. Series 21, for example, is covering the Asian region, and we actually did preview the preliminary round there. We were hoping to do more previewing for this qualification, but life got busy for us. Nevertheless, we still have hopes of covering it, but we'll now have to do it mostly through reviews.
Yeah, so the past, present, and future media cast that we produced in spring 2024 is still useful. It outlines the World Cup 2026 qualifying procedure in each region, and we'll add a link to that media cast in the show notes.
Yeah, and we'll come back to World Cup 2026 qualifying, but we'll do that after our current focus, which is this 2025 Gold Cup, and particularly this episode on Group D. So the tournament begins on June 14th, 2025. We are producing this group and team series as well as the player series. The player series has two parts to it, and we're well underway with that, posting part one. But back to this media cast, we're dividing this into three parts.
Yeah, in part one, we'll introduce the teams in the group, giving the location and population of each.
Yeah, and we should call them sections just to separate them from other things that we call parts. So section 2 here, we'll do an overview of each team's history and recent form.
Yeah, and section 3 will be a comparison of the teams in ranking, head-to-head records and chances, and we'll end with a discussion of their prospects and our predictions.
All right. Well, before we begin, we've been kind of doing a theme for these group podcasts. So let's go with age of the teams.
I'm going to guess the USA is the oldest, but I imagine the three other teams are all probably a little bit older than I would think, potentially, seeing that from the other groups.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to call on you to be a bit more specific about the other three.
Okay, I'm going to go USA, Saudi Arabia, Trinidad, and Haiti being the newest.
All right, great. And we've also been predicting size. I think that should be a little bit easier.
Yeah, in this group, it definitely the USA largest, then Saudi Arabia, Haiti, and then Trinidad. I'm feeling confident with that.
All right, good for you. Well, I won't answer, but I think in part one those questions will be asked. So let's move on, to section 1 and take a look at the countries, basically, beginning with the USA.
Yeah, the USA is the largest country in this group. The largest in North America by population at almost 350 million people. And their first international game was 1885. That's older than I thought.
That is pretty old. And I'm wearing a USA shirt here, not so much because I'm supporting them above the other teams, but because it's the only shirt out of one of these countries that I have. What are you wearing?
I'm wearing Canada. Looks like we're at war here, Kev.
All right, let's move on to the second team, Haiti.
Yeah, Haiti shares the island of Hispaniola with Dominican Republic. It's near Cuba and Jamaica. Haiti's population is around 12 million people, and their first international game was 1925.
All right. So far, you're doing well. Third team, Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, Trinidad and Tobago are two islands north of Venezuela. Trinidad is quite a bit bigger than Tobago. This has a population of 1.3 million people, and their first international game was 1934. So they're a younger team than Haiti.
Okay, well, they are actually a lot smaller than Haiti than I thought there. And of course, the last team is invited guest Saudi Arabia.
That's right, not in North America at all, but occupying the Arabian Peninsula, half a world away. Saudi Arabia has about 32 million people, and their first international game was 1957. So I was wrong on that one.
Yeah, they are actually not a very old team compared to the others. Saudi Arabia about the same size of Canada. Let's compare these teams to each other directly here.
Yeah, the USA, as they often are the big fish. 350 million people, so really a huge country, especially some of the countries they come up against, as we'll see. Haiti is kind of not small by North American standards and by Caribbean standards, but still just 12 million people. Trinidad is quite small. It's just over a million, 1.3 million. And then Saudi Arabia, like you said, a bit smaller than Canada at 32 million people.
All right, so it's Trinidad and Tobago kind of looking like the minnows here in terms of population. And there we have it. Okay, we move on to section 2 where we start looking at the teams. And we're going to begin with kind of an overall view of USA in terms of their participation and their strength or achievements.
Yeah, so the USA has a much longer soccer tradition than most would guess, than I would guess, I'll add. Few people realize that they not only entered the first World Cup in 1930, but took third place there. The only cup they failed to participate in was 1938 when they withdrew. Ironically, their participation in the regional cup is not as good. They did not enter 4 of the first 5 editions, but participated consistently from 1973. USA was generally granted automatic qualification into the regional tournament, unlike most teams who had a local tournament as a qualification process. Since 2019, though, the CONCACAF Nations League has replaced those local tournaments, and the US must earn qualification into the Gold Cup, though recently the top teams have been giving buys to later rounds of the competition, so they end up kind of getting automatically into the Cup without having to qualify still.
All right. And we will go into a bit more detail on some of those things that you said. How about their strength and achievements there?
So USA's best achievement in World Cup play is the semifinal finish in 1930. More recently, it's reaching the quarterfinal stage of the 2002 World Cup. They never won the regional title before 1990, but they won the first Gold Cup in 1991 and have taken the title in almost half of the editions, them and Mexico almost exclusively lifting the trophy.
Right, okay, and we will again look into more detail. And we begin actually that more detail here with a closer look at their World Cup record. So a slightly a closer look, but an overview nonetheless.
Yeah, despite the USA's impressive continuity in World Cup play, at least, their history is really best described as 2 separate periods of ascendancy. The first was in the early years, where they participated in the first World Cups and sometimes surprised. In addition to third place in 1930, they pulled a shock win over England in the 1950 Cup, beating the 250-1 odds. Wow. From 1954 to 1994, however, they failed to qualify for the World Cup, even at times when Mexico, the regular qualifiers, left the door open.
Yeah, I've heard actually with that 1950 game against England that reporters thought it was a mistake, so they wired back to England that it wasn't a 1-0 loss for England, it was a 10-1 win. That's the only way they could make sense of it.
Yeah, indeed. The second period of ascendancy started from 1994 and was actually motivated by their hosting the World Cup that year. From that time, they've been almost on par with Mexico, and those two dominate the region. The USA qualified for every World Cup from 1994 to 2014, though that is partly because the strength of their region makes it easy for them to get one of the 3 or more spots available. That made it a shock, however, when they failed to reach the Cup in 2018. In the tournament, they've passed the group stage 5 out of 7 times between 1994 and 2022, but only in 2002 did they get beyond the round of 16.
All right, that is the World Cup history, and let's get into the Regional Cup history. Again, an overview, but a bit closer than what we said in the first section.
All right, so there is no early period of ascendancy in the regional competition. Shockingly, they did not enter or did not qualify for the Regional Cup from 1963 to 1981, and were knocked out of the group stage in their first successful qualification in 1985. However, from 1989, they dominated along with Mexico. They finished second in 1989 and won in 1991. Since then, they've rarely failed to finish in the top two. Their worst performance in 2000 when they only reached the quarterfinals, knocked out by...
I believe it was Canada.
Yes. It helps that tournament, the Gold Cup, has been almost entirely held in the US, so they always have home field advantage.
Right.
The USA's best period followed their worst. After winning the Gold Cup in 1991, they failed to raise the trophy over the next four tournaments. 11 years later, in 2002, they won their second title, but then won three of the next four. Since then, they and Mexico have roughly alternated wins, though in 2015, the USA finished fourth, the first time they hadn't reached the final since 2003. USA increasingly has been sending a B team to this tournament, their A team playing in more international tournaments like the World Cup or Copa America. Though they won the title with their B team in 2021, it saw them knocked out in the semifinals in 2023.
Right, and it looks like they'll be sending a B team to this cup as well. Well, most of the teams in the region do have a local cup, so we'll just touch on that so as to be consistent.
Sure. Do you want to cover this, Kev?
Sure. So USA didn't have a smaller regional cup like the Caribbean Cup and the Central American Cup. Those teams in the region used those tournaments for qualification for the Gold Cup. The USA, though, was generally given an automatic spot in that tournament, and a tradition still exists of stronger teams receiving a bye to the later rounds of qualification in the CONCACAF region. While that gives a bit of an unfair advantage sometimes, it also deprives the USA of the team honing function that qualification provides. So the Nations League was designed in part to address that. So let's take a look at the Nations League then.
Yeah, I mean, if that was the intention, it is ironic that the USA and the six teams reaching the final round of 2018 World Cup qualification were automatically placed in League A. USA has, without trouble, remained at that level, though. They won their group the first two seasons, but since then have received byes to the quarterfinal round of the final phase. They finished champions in the first three seasons, but finished a disappointing fourth in the 2024-25 season.
Oh my goodness, that means they lost the third place match. Who did they lose it to, Connor?
If memory recalls, it was Canada.
We're sorry. We apologize to our American fans. We just can't help ourselves because Canada has been weak for so long that we're rejoicing in few successes here. Let's move on to the recent history. We're going to look at basically the last competition of each of these tournaments they're in, beginning with the World Cup in 2022.
Yeah, so the USA received a bye to the final round, which was an 8-team round robin. And while they did perform well, it wasn't without its defeats and its scares. The USA did not dominate as they have in the past, but finished third. In fact, tied on points with Costa Rica for the Intercontinental Playoff spot. A superior goal difference, so qualified them for the World Cup automatically. It was a bit of a slow start, but a strong home record really is what helped them qualify. But only one win on the road. Mm-hmm. Perhaps a sign of their struggles, but perhaps a sign of the increasing strength of the region.
Yeah, and that's a pattern. I don't know if we're going to see it here, but generally kind of looking weaker on the road there. They only gave up they only gave points away at home in one game there, so very strong at home, but that road record is a bit concerning.
That's right.
Nevertheless, oh, sorry.
Nope, go ahead.
Nevertheless, they did finish in the top three there, so got an automatic spot to the Cup. So let's see how they did in the Cup itself.
Yeah, they were grouped with England, Wales, and Iran. An interesting group. They tied both Wales and England and then beat Iran in their final match to finish second in the group. That set up a round of 16 match against the Netherlands. They actually played well in that match, but the Netherlands won out 3-1 winners.
Yeah. The captain of the US team got in trouble from an Iranian reporter saying he was pronouncing the name of the country wrong. Is it Iran or Iran?
Oh, you'd have to tell me.
Oh, apparently it's both. Both are acceptable pronunciations. So the captain handled it very well, but I wish he had known to say that to the reporter. Okay, that's the World Cup in 2022. Let's move on to the Gold Cup in 2023, the most recent edition of that tournament.
Yeah, they did have to qualify through Nations League A play. They were grouped with El Salvador and Grenada. And though they finished comfortably first, they did drop points in El Salvador. At the Gold Cup tournament, they topped the group ahead of Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and St. Kitts and Nevis, with a couple thumping 6-0 wins there, but a tie with Jamaica. In the quarterfinal, they tied 1-1 with Canada. That went to extra time and finished 2-2, but they beat Canada on a penalty shootout. And then in the semifinal, it was again a tie that went to a penalty shootout, but this time they lost. It was a defeat against Panama, who moved on to the final. So a rare tournament where they did not get to the final match.
Yeah, and as we said, a B team there. Kind of interesting, those two games. Both teams, or in both games, both teams scored extra time goals. So pretty exciting games. All right, so that's the most recent Gold Cup. We'll take a look at their most recent tournament, though. That's the Copa America.
Yeah, where the USA was the host. They had a qualifying match against Trinidad and Tobago. They won on aggregate, but as you mentioned, with a bit of a pattern, they actually lost to Trinidad and Tobago in the away leg, but a 3-0 home win was enough to see them through. In the tournament, it started promisingly with a win over Bolivia, but a loss to CONCACAF compatriots, I guess, Panama, and then a second loss to Uruguay saw the USA go out at the group stage in the tournament in which they hosted. Not the result they were hoping for.
Definitely, and struggling there with Panama, which we'll see continues into the Cup. This cost Greg Berhalter, the manager, his job. The performance here, it was their A team here. So Mauricio Pochettino came in shortly after and actually guided them here through the 2024-25 Nations League, which is what we'll look at here.
Yeah, that was his first tournament. It began with a quarterfinal playoff against Jamaica. They had no problem. And then the semifinal matchup saw them group with Panama. And as in the Copa America, Panama was victorious, 1-0. And then the USA in the third place match, as we saw, lost to Canada 2-1. So they finished fourth. Disappointing for a team that had previously won the other three editions.
Yeah, and especially so since these games are at home for the USA, so they kind of have that advantage. So a kind of a disappointing run for the new manager there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we next look at the qualification for this Cup. This is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and it was the same as the Nations League. It was a quarterfinal against Jamaica. They won both legs, and that put them into this tournament.
Right, and so Jamaica had to go through a further playoff process, but made it anyway. And for each team, we're looking at how their World Cup 2026 qualifying is going. It is underway in CONCACAF.
Yeah, but nothing to see for the US so far, and there will be nothing. Of course, they are co-hosts, the primary host, so there's no qualification for them.
Right, so a bit of that ghost coming back to haunt them here in that they have no kind of qualification process, kind of meaningful games through which to hone. I'm looking for a better word than hone the squad. Do you have one?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I get the point you're making. This CONCACAF Gold Cup, even though we're a year out from the World Cup, is their last major tournament or their last kind of, in some ways, competitive games that they'll be playing. So potentially
Yeah,
important for them, especially as the U.S. has not got the results they've wanted in the most recent Nations League, Copa America, and Gold Cup. So they have a bit of righting the ship, and that's what Pochettino was brought in for.
exactly. Well, we'll be talking more about that in part three, because really I see this tournament as their last and best opportunity to work on the squad, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. But we'll come back to that in section three when we discuss things. And here we'll move on to look at the second team, Haiti, beginning with a broad overview of their participation, strength, and achievements.
Yeah, so Haiti's a senior team, having first entered World Cup qualification in 1934. That was the second cup. They were also founding members of the CONCACAF Regional Tournament in 1963 and the Caribbean Regional Tournament in 1989. However, their participation has been inconsistent. After 1934, they only entered one cup, that was in 1954, up until 1970. After that, they participated consistently except for 1990 when they did not enter. In the Regional Cup, however, they quite consistently participated from the beginning in 1963, absent only once through disqualification in 69, but then they withdrew from most tournaments between 1989 and 98. They participated consistently since, even through a devastating earthquake in 2010, which cost the lives of a quarter of their Football Association staff. In terms of achievement, Haiti reached the World Cup once in 1974, where they were knocked out at the group stage. Having come close in the two cups surrounding that, they have never come close since. The early 70s was their peak in regional competition also, winning the CONCACAF Championship in 1973 and coming second in the two surrounding tournaments. From their return to regular participation since the year 2000, they've reached the Gold Cup about two-thirds of the time. They have passed the group stage one-third of the time, with their best result a semi-final in 2019, relatively recently.
Mm-hmm.
In their local region, they won the Caribbean Cup once in 2007, but finished in the top three several times. They have never reached the quarterfinal stage of the Nations League.
Right, and we'll zoom in on all of those things in a bit more detail, beginning with the World Cup overview here.
Yes, so Haiti participated in 1934 World Cup qualification, which is an accolade which few CONCACAF teams can boast. They were knocked out there in a preliminary regional set consisting of 3 games with Cuba. They have little to boast of beyond that other than a strong period in the early 70s. They came within minutes of reaching the Cup in 1970, losing a final playoff to El Salvador in extra time. They did reach the World Cup in the following edition in 1974. They were out of their depth once there, though, losing all 3 games, including a 7-0 drubbing at the hands of Argentina. They also came quite close in 1978, their finest period in world football. But they never came close again, reaching the final round in 1982, but never again after that.
All right, that is their World Cup history. And in the Regional Cup, we will take a closer look at that. Do you want me to do this part?
Sure.
All right. Well, their golden period in the 1970s extends to the Regional Cup, as described above. In fact, the two are intricately connected, since the CONCACAF Championship tournament was the qualification tournament for the World Cup. Thus, their regional title in 1973 earned them the region's single spot for the 1974 World Cup, and their second place finish in 1978 accounts for their falling just short of the World Cup that Connor talked about. However, this is not the case for the first of those close calls. Their second place finish in World Cup 1970 qualification. That was actually a separate qualification, but they also finished second in the 1971 CONCACAF Championship. So it was an impressive decade for sure, but Haiti became weak in the 1980s and almost absent in the 1990s. In the new millennium, though, they recovered some form. They reached the cup more than half of the time from 2000 onwards and passed the group stage in 2002. They didn't do that again until 2009, but they have done so about half the time since 2009. And as we said earlier, in 2019, they got their best result by reaching the semi-final. Do you know who they beat to reach the semi-final there?
They did beat Canada along the way. Was it us?
Yeah, it was, and we were like rejoicing as we went into the second half. I think we were 2-0 up and all looking good, and then Haiti came back.
Yeah, that's right. They won 3-2, if I recall.
Yes, I still weep over that one. Let's take a look at their local tournament, the Caribbean Cup.
Yeah, so even though the Caribbean Cup was a qualifier for the Gold Cup until 2017, their results did not run parallel other than poor performances resulting in failure to reach the Gold Cup. For example, their strongest period in the Caribbean Cup was around the turn of the century, where they finished in the top 3 for 3 tournaments in a row, but that was an unremarkable period in the Gold Cup. They also won their competition, their only title, in 2007, but that was a weak period in the Gold Cup. Toward the end of the Caribbean Cup era, they were inconsistent, finishing third twice, but also not reaching the finals twice.
All right. Well, that Caribbean Cup had its last edition in 2017, and from there, the Nations League took over. How have they done in the Nations League?
So in the placement round in 2019, Haiti started well, coming first of 34 there. That was 4 wins from 4 matches.
That's right. And basically, it's like 7th place because the top 6 in the region got automatic buys, but still first among the rest, best of the rest.
Yes, that put them in League A with those other automatically qualified teams. However, they were relegated to League B in the following season, and they've actually bounced back and forth between League A and B ever since. Their finishes at or near the bottom of their League A campaigns mean they've been far from reaching the quarterfinal stage and some of the advantages that go with it, like automatic qualification for the Cup or a bid for the 2024 Copa America.
That's right. Okay, well, that is it for the overviews. Now we get a bit more granular looking into the recent history, and here we'll go with the most recent World Cup in 2022.
Yeah, they entered in round 1, which was a 5-team group stage, though St. Lucia pulled out, which they topped ahead of Nicaragua, Belize, and Turks and Caicos Island. That put them in a home and away playoff against Canada. The winner would move on to the final 8, but Canada were victorious, winning 4-0 on aggregate.
Right, and Canada went on to actually win the final round there. So the Gold Cup in 2023 is the next tournament.
Yeah, they qualified from their Nations League B spot. There they topped a group ahead of Guyana, Bermuda, and Montserrat. And how it worked was that finishing first in Group B put you automatically into the Gold Cup tournament.
That's right.
Once there, they started with an impressive win over Qatar. Qatar were invited guests, and they'll meet the invited guests here again. But Qatar actually did well in that tournament. However, it was defeats against Mexico and Honduras in a difficult group that saw them finish bottom, just a point behind Qatar and Honduras, who were second and third.
Right. So, yes, again, the top 4 team probably stronger than other top 4 teams there and here in 2025 also. Let's move on to the Copa America. They didn't actually qualify for it, but we'll see why here.
Yeah, and they did have a chance through their Nations League A group. However, just 3 points from 4 matches saw them relegated, and also not having a chance to kind of participate in a playoff to try and reach that Copa America.
That's right. They would have had to reach the quarterfinals there, so finish in the top two, was it, or just the top one?
Top two.
Right. So far from reaching the Copa America there, let's take a look at their most recent Nations League campaign, the 2024-25 season.
Yeah, so too weak for Group A. They were, again, too strong for League B, so their bouncing has continued. Strong enough that they actually won all 6 of their matches against Puerto Rico, St. Martin, and Aruba.
All right, so back in League A for the next season. And we'll take a look at how they qualified for this cup, but it's basically what we just looked at.
Exactly. The first place finishers in Group B get automatic qualification. So by topping that group with 18 points, Haiti qualified for this tournament.
That is right. Okay, let's go to the World Cup qualification and see how that's going for them. So, yeah, take it away.
Yeah, so they have won 2 games out of their first 4 to be played in a 5-team group. The top 2 advance, currently them and Curacao, who are the 2 strongest teams in that group by some stretch, are first and second. They meet in their final match, but probably more for bragging rights, as both first and second will go on to the next round.
Yeah, it's a bit academic. So those first 2 games were played in June 2024. The next 2 are in June 2025. So they actually act as warm-up games for the Gold Cup here. But well, it would be an important warm-up game. But as you say, the Haiti Curacao probably more for bragging rights, since both of them will probably advance to the next round. Okay, and so what are their chances, Connor, of making the cup? We have the 3 automatically qualifying: Mexico, USA, and Canada. And then I believe there's 3 spots, or is it 3.5 spots available for the other CONCACAF teams?
It might even be 3.25, actually. But yeah, 3 other teams will qualify. Panama are probably the favorites. They've been very strong recently, but you look at, maybe Costa Rica, Honduras, Jamaica. Haiti are not far below that. So I think this is a real opportunity. This is a Haiti team, that's looked very weak for a long time, as we discussed, since the 1970s. But they've done a bit better since then in the last few years. So it'll be tough, but they certainly have an opportunity.
Yeah, I have a soft spot for Haiti. I hope they make it. And certainly this is going to be their best chance in a long time, even with the expanded World Cup, CONCACAF getting that advantage that the host nations get.
That's right.
Okay, that's it for Haiti, our second team. And so we move on to our third, Trinidad and Tobago, beginning with a general overview of their participation and strength. And I know the graphics are quite small here. So if you are watching the YouTube, at this point, I would just kind of look for red and green, red being kind of negative non-qualification, and green being a success.
Yeah. So Trinidad and Tobago played their first international game in 1934, but didn't enter World Cup qualification until 1966 and the Regional Cup in 1967. They've participated without fail since then. Actually pretty impressive, because even some bigger countries don't have that record.
Yeah, that's right.
Their greatest achievement was reaching the 2006 World Cup. They had actually come close to qualifying in 1974 and 1990, though they haven't come close since. They reached the final round in half of the recent editions, but invariably finished last once there, except for in 2006. Since the CONCACAF Championship was a qualifier for the World Cup until 1989, their second place finish in 1973 and third place finish in 1989 also represent their strongest periods at the regional level. Following that, their best result in Gold Cup play was a semi-final finish in 2000. 2 quarterfinal finishes in a row in 2013 and 2015 were also good, but those were surrounded by non-qualification. At the local level, they were one of the main forces in the Caribbean zone, having won the now defunct Cup in 8 of its 19 editions, more than Jamaica. But they fell off towards the end of that competition and are now clearly inferior to Jamaica. but has spent 4 of the 5 Nations League seasons in League A.
Right, and we'll be looking at those things in closer detail, beginning with a bit of a closer view of World Cup there.
Yeah, so their qualification for the 2006 World Cup was a surprise, largely because it was not predicted by strong performances surrounding it. That is somewhat defining of Trinidad and Tobago. Their close brushes with reaching the World Cups in 1974 and 90 are surrounded by campaigns where they did not even reach the final round. In fairness, the 2006 campaign was surrounded by campaigns that saw them reach the final round of qualification, though they came in last in both cases. 2018 was the last time they reached the final round, and while it came with the glory of preventing the United States from reaching the World Cup, they finished last again. 2014 and 2022 saw them prevented from reaching the final round at the hands of much weaker teams in Guyana and St. Kitts and Nevis.
All right, that is the World Cup in overview, and let's do the Regional Cup here.
So at the regional level, Trinidad and Tobago qualified for the final tournament about 3/4 of the time. Their close brushes with the World Cup in 1973 and 90 are the result of doing well in the CONCACAF Championship, which often doubled as a qualifier for the global tournament. 3 top 4 finishes prior to the Gold Cup are impressive, though they were always immediately followed by 2 disappointing campaigns. That pattern holds in the Gold Cup era also. Their best finish, reaching the semifinals in 2000, was followed by their regular group stage exit and then a non-qualification. Back-to-back quarterfinal finishes in 2013 and 15 also followed with a non-qualification. Generally, they are knocked out at the group stage, and only once in the Gold Cup era did they fail to qualify for 2 tournaments in a row.
All right, so it looks like group stage exit is a kind of regular result in the Gold Cup. Of course, they'll be hoping for better this time around. And we heard earlier that they actually had pretty good success in the Caribbean Cup. Let's take a closer look at that one.
All right, do you want to take that away?
Sure. Well, now it's a defunct competition, but the Caribbean Cup was the qualifying tournament for the Gold Cup from 1989 until from 1991 until 2017. So this tournament slightly older than just the qualification tournament. Trinidad and Tobago were the Caribbean powerhouse in the 1990s, winning 8 of the first 12 editions all the way up to 2001. Ironically, they were dropping off this competition when they qualified for their only World Cup in 2006. The only time they finished or were knocked out at the group stage were in 2008 and 2010. So yes, as you said in the last section, they always seem to follow up a success with a little period of weakness. They took second place in 2012 and 2014 here, but they hadn't won a title after 2001. And then the tournament ended with a whimper, their only non-qualification for this cup in the last edition in 2017. They nevertheless bask in the stale glory of winning more titles than Jamaica, so there is that.
Yes, that is an ongoing rivalry there.
Right, and that fact can't be changed, so they get to hold that up forever. Okay, let's move on to the tournament that took over as the qualification for the Gold Cup at the Nations League.
So Trinidad and Tobago was placed automatically into League A, one of 6 reaching the final round of 2018 World Cup qualification, but they were immediately relegated to League B after a poor showing in the first season, finishing behind Martinique. They would have remained in that league but for the disqualification of Nicaragua the following season. They proved worthy of it though, finishing second of 6 in the 2023-24 Nations League season, which saw them reach the quarterfinals, their only trip to the final stages. That kept them in League A, and a 4th of 6 finish in the most recent season means a continued presence in League A.
Right, and we will look at that most recent season as we move into the recent history here, but we're going to go back to their last World Cup tournament there in 2022.
Yeah, so in the opening round of qualifying, they were in a 5-team group. They came in as a pot 1 team, but nevertheless finished behind St. Kitts and Nevis, who took the spot and advanced to round 2 of 3. So a premature end for Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah, and those away draws with Puerto Rico and Bahamas. Puerto Rico's getting better, but Bahamas are a fatally weak team, so a very disappointing tournament. So knocked out in round 1 of 3 there. I think that may have been their worst performance in a World Cup. Nevertheless, let's take a look at the Gold Cup in 2023. They usually make it to this tournament. Let's see if they did here.
Yeah, so through League B, they had to finish first. They finished second behind Nicaragua, but as you alluded to, Nicaragua were then disqualified, so that bumped Trinidad and Tobago up into the first place spot. So that's how they got into the Gold Cup in 2023. Once there, though, they opened up with a victory over St. Kitts and Nevis, exacting some measure of revenge for the World Cup qualification, but then defeats against Jamaica and the USA saw them finish third out of 4 and failing to advance.
Yeah, heavy defeats there. USA exacting revenge on the 2018 World Cup knockout. I think not for the first time either.
Yeah.
All right, then Copa America. They didn't actually reach it, but let's see what happened there.
Yeah, so that was qualifying through the Nations League 2023-24. They finished second in their Nations League A group behind Panama, and might have actually topped the group had it not been for a 5-3 defeat to Curacao. Had they won that game, it actually would have gone through, I believe, to a playoff. So disappointing for them to come so close, but fail to have that chance to qualify.
Oh, okay. Let me just correct you there. Actually, both of the teams, Panama, Trinidad, and Tobago, carried on to the quarterfinal. So winning the quarterfinal would have put them through.
Oh, sorry, you are correct there. And yes, as I see that, put them in a match with the United States. And yeah, United States won 3-0 at home, but actually Trinidad went down with a fight, beating the United States 2-1 in the home leg, but it wasn't enough to advance directly. However, they had a further playoff against Canada, and again fell short, losing 2-0. So a couple bites at the cherry for Trinidad, but ultimately unsuccessful.
Yeah, Canada also losing their quarterfinal match there to Jamaica, but both of them moving on to this playoff and the winner going through. So that winner turned out to be Canada. All right, that was a bit of a complex one there, that Copa America qualification. Let's take a look at the most recent Nations League season in 24-25.
Yeah, so again in League A for Trinidad, and again in a 16 group. They only play 4 matches though, so they don't play everyone. Trinidad finished with a win, 2 draws, and a defeat to Honduras. So they finished 4th of 6, and that was neither moving on to the next stage of the Nations League nor relegation, but status quo for them.
That's right. And so it does leave them in Nations League A. So they've been pretty good at staying in Nations League there, just one, or Nations League A, just one season in Nations League B for them. And they'll be there next time around. Let's look at their qualification for this cup.
Yeah, finishing 4th in League A set them up for a playoff. That was against Cuba. And actually Trinidad and Tobago did well to win on the road and then at home. And that advanced them to the cup.
That's right. Cuba in a bit of a sad decline right now, but Trinidad and Tobago easily getting through that playoff to reach the cup here. And yes, World Cup qualifying has begun, and Trinidad and Tobago are part of it. So I'll just say round 1 of 3 was just the bottom teams in the CONCACAF region. Just a few of the teams had to play in that round, and to round out the numbers for round 2 here, 5 in each group.
Yeah, Trinidad and Tobago opened with a draw at home to Grenada, so that wasn't great. They did win big in Bahamas. They have to play St. Kitts and Nevis, who have given them a bit of trouble, as we've seen. If they win that, they'll be in really good shape, despite a final round match against Costa Rica. If they fail to get maximum points against St. Kitts, they'll need a result against Costa Rica to move on to the next round.
Yeah, well put there. And you can see by this result, with the Bahamas winning 7-1 in the Bahamas, how disappointing that result was when we saw them tie in the Bahamas earlier on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, St. Kitts and Nevis can be a bit of a tripping point for Trinidad and Tobago here, so they'll be hoping not to go out of their hands again. All right, that brings us to the end of Team 3, Trinidad and Tobago, and now we fly across the world to look at Saudi Arabia. And so we won't be looking at the competitions that we have been looking at other than the World Cup, but let's take a look at their overall participation and strength here.
Yeah, so Saudi Arabia is a latecomer to world soccer, participating only from 1978 in the World Cup, though they did enter consistently after that. They were not a member of AFC for the Asian Cups from 1956 to 72, though they qualified for the 1976 version, but then withdrew for reasons unknown from the tournament hosted by Iran. They also withdrew, along with several other countries, from Kuwait 1980, but from 1984, their participation has been consistent. Their local zone is technically the West Asian Football Federation, or WAF. However, there seemed a lack of enthusiasm for the WAF Championship, presumably because many of the members already had the Gulf Nations Cup as a long-standing tournament. So we'll treat that as Saudi Arabia's local tournament here. Saudi Arabia participated in each of its 24 editions since 1970, except for one withdrawal in 1990. And Saudi Arabia also competes in the Arab Cup, a tournament that is becoming more important. However, we're not really going to look at that here.
All right, and the next Arab Cup coming up in December of this year. And yeah, I'm thinking of attending it. I'm trying to persuade my wife. All right, let's look at Saudi Arabia's general strength and achievements.
So in terms of strength, it's a bit hard to pin Saudi Arabia down. They've often reached the World Cup from 1994 onward to make them a top-tier nation in Asia, and their dominance of the Asian Cup over 1984 to 2000 supports this. However, there are periods, even in recent times, where they've looked more like a second-tier nation, especially from 2010 to 2015, where they failed to reach 2 World Cups in a row, never failing otherwise, and getting knocked out at the group stage of 2 Asian Cups in a row, having otherwise failed only once since 1984. Their highest achievement in the World Cup was 1994, reaching the round of 16, and becoming only the second Asian nation to do so. And they won the Asian Cup 3 out of 4 times from 1984 to 1996, but haven't done so after.
All right, Connor, I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask if you know which the first Asian nation to pass the group stage at a World Cup was, if Saudi Arabia was the second.
That's a good question. A few candidates. I'm going to guess South Korea.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that too, because South Korea regularly made it to the World Cup. However, they rarely won a game there, and it wasn't them. Look up!
Oh, was it North Korea?
North Korea in 1966 were the first Asian team there.
Right. At Italy's expense, some point along the way.
Okay. Yes, the darlings of the 1966 World Cup, North Korea. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit on the World Cup here. We said they're regular qualifiers, so we'll take a look at how it's gone for them.
So Saudi Arabia appeared a weak team in World Cup qualification until 1994. Despite winning 2 Asian Cups in 1984 and 88, they failed to qualify for a World Cup in that period, not even reaching the final stage in 1986. In 1994, their Asian Cup form caught up, and they not only reached the World Cup in 1994, but passed the group stage. They reached every World Cup after that, except for missing 2 in a row in their week period, so that's 6 out of 8 editions from 1994. Their 2014 campaign marks the low point of their slump, failing to reach the final round and finishing 3rd of 4 in a semi-final group, which included a draw with Thailand. The glory of 1994 saw them win 2 games over Belgium and Morocco, but they didn't win a World Cup game again until beating Egypt in 2018. However, their most glorious game is a shock win over Argentina in the opening game of the 2022 World Cup, made that much more special by being the only team to take points off the Lionel Messi-led eventual champions.
Yeah, great. Do you remember that game?
I remember it, and I actually say it's one of the greatest games I've ever watched.
It was really something.
Yeah, led by the charismatic Hervé Renard.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
they played such a daring high line. It was just an incredible game to watch, and in what was a glorious World Cup.
Yeah, it really was. I think Argentina was offside like about 12 times in the first half there. So a really incredible strategy. And just to clarify, that wasn't the opening game of the World Cup, but it was the opening game of that group.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, so Saudi Arabia providing great excitement there. Let's hope they do that in the Gold Cup here, although not at Canada's expense. Let's take a look at their regional tournament, the Asian Cup.
Yeah.
So
So even though I'll do this one.
All right.
Even though the Football Federation was established in 1956, they were not part of the Asian Federation until the mid-1970s. They actually qualified in 1976, but withdrew from that and the following cup. 1984 thus became their first completed entry, and they became the top Asian team immediately, winning the title then and again in 1988. Indeed, they came first or second until 2007, except for a ghastly year in 2004 when they were knocked out at the group stage. That seemed an anomalous year, but actually foreshadowed an end to their dominance. Tournaments since 2011 have seen them reach the round of 16 at best.
All right. Well, their local tournament is not really the Gulf Cup, but we're going to act as if it is here because that's just the best way to take a look at them. And that is a really old tournament, 26 editions since 1970, played roughly every 2 years. And how have they done there?
Yeah, so it was a long and frustrating road to Saudi Arabia's first title. From the tournament's inception in 1970, Saudi Arabia finished in the top 4 in 9 of the first 11 editions without winning a title, despite having 2 Asian Cup trophies on their mantelpiece. But the inevitable title came in 1994, and they went on to win it 3 times over the next 5 editions. The last of those victories in 2003 marked top 3 finishes in 13 of the 16 editions. Then came the dread 2004 and a shocking group stage exit from the Cup. Top 3 finishes continued throughout, and the week period of the World and Asian Cup was not exactly paralleled, but group stage exits in 2013 and 2017 at least acknowledged the decline.
Right, so here we have the high point in 1994, like the World Cup there, and also their low point in 2004, like the Asian Cup. So interesting parallels here, even if it doesn't run completely parallel.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll take a close look at their recent tournaments as well, and that begins with the same World Cup 2022 and their qualification run for it.
Yeah, so their qualification, of course, looks a lot different than what we've seen in North America. They topped the 4-team group, a 5-team group in round 1, finishing ahead of Uzbekistan, Palestine, Singapore, and Yemen. That put them into the final round where they did very well. They topped the group ahead of Japan, Australia, Oman, China, and Vietnam. only losing one game, and that was on the road in Japan. So a really strong qualification. And then in the World Cup, as we saw, it started with a hugely impressive victory over eventual champions Argentina, but then defeats against Poland and Mexico somewhat agonizingly saw them fail to advance from the group stage despite their impressive start.
Right, you think with starting with the win over Argentina would mean they passed the group, but unfortunately they did not. Finished fourth in the group. I just want to point out here that in the final round there, they met Japan and Australia. They also meet Japan and Australia in their 2026 campaign, which we'll be taking a look at soon. But let's take a look at the Asian Cup here. And do you want me to take this one, Connor?
Sure.
Yeah, it's a bit complex in Asia, actually, a bit of an ingenious system. It begins with World Cup qualifying. So basically, if you pass round 2 of 3, as they did here in the campaign that Connor just talked about, you receive automatic qualification for the Asian Cup. So basically what happens is that they continue on with World Cup qualification, while the teams that don't pass this round continue on with Asian Cup qualification. So Saudi Arabia, as we saw earlier, finished that group ahead of Uzbekistan. And so that was it for them. They were qualifying for the Asian Cup right there, while Uzbekistan and some of the teams below them went on to further rounds of Asian Cup qualification. So now we reached the group stage. In the group stage, they started with 2 wins there. The first over Oman, probably their toughest game in the group stage here, and then they beat Kyrgyzstan. But Thailand, once again, proving a bit of a difficult team for them. They tied Thailand in the 3rd game. It didn't really matter though, because they had already advanced from the team, and advancing in first place you would think is a bit lucky, but unfortunately South Korea had finished 2nd in their group, and so they found themselves facing South Korea in the round of 16. You'd think they deserved a bit of an easier team than that, eh?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, well, they were competitive in that game. It was a 1-1 draw, even at the end of extra time, so it went to penalties, and South Korea won on penalties. So a bit unfortunate in finding themselves out at the round of 16 there.
Yeah. Unfortunate for them that they couldn't kind of build on a kind of a good return to form, I guess, in both World Cup qualifying and then, of course, with the remarkable result at the World Cup.
Exactly. Yeah, not returning to the great form they had in the Asian Cup earlier on, but yeah, competitive form there. Okay, well, let's take a look at the 2025 Gulf Cup. I see my graphics have been off a bit all the way through here because of the flags thing. I just realized that making the flags bigger has caused this problem. There we go, 2024 Gulf Cup in Kuwait. That was in December of 2024, Connor. So it's actually called the 2024-25 Gulf Cup because one game, the final, was played in 2025, but I'm calling it the 2024 Gulf Cup.
Well, and Saudi Arabia did not make it to 2025 in the tournament.
That's true.
They finished 2nd in a group behind Bahrain, who beat them. And then in a semifinal match against Oman, they lost. So it was a semifinal exit there for the Gulf Cup. Right,
and the team they lost to in the first game, Bahrain, finished with the title there, so good for Bahrain. The 2025 Gold Cup qualifying, well, they didn't do any qualification games, but they were invited guests, not only for this cup, but for the next one also. So was it Qatar? Did Qatar play 2 tournaments as well?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is related to them hosting the World Cup in 2030. And I think they host the next Asian Cup as well. So just like Qatar, they're hosting. They seem to want to play a lot of games. We have one more matter to deal with here. Their qualifying is much further along than in the CONCACAF region. They're already in round 3 of 4 and near the end of it. Can you take us through that?
Yeah, so Saudi Arabia didn't receive or received a bye in the round 1, which is really just for the weakest teams. In round 2, they finished second, tied for points with Jordan, ahead of Tajikistan and Pakistan. But the top 2 advanced to the third round, which is kind of really what we're used to being the final round. There is an intercontinental playoff after that. As you mentioned, they're in a tough group with Japan and Australia, also China, Bahrain, and Indonesia. And with only 2 games left, they've played 8 and currently sit third, 10 points behind Japan and a point ahead of Indonesia. So they actually have a bit of work to do still to qualify. They have tricky games left away in Bahrain and then a home game with Australia to try and qualify automatically.
Yeah, that's right. The top 2 will qualify automatically, and the next 2 will go on to a further round of World Cup qualification. Japan running away with it here, but still pretty contentious. In fact, Connor, I think in the round before this, the 5 teams, or maybe 2 rounds before, the 5 teams were all within 1 point of each other, if I'm recalling correctly. This is a very tight group that has kind of spread out a bit over the last couple of games.
Yeah.
Do you see any good results for them there, or any disappointing results?
I think they'll finish third or fourth, which again moves them on to the next round, but is not what they were hoping for. A few disappointing ones. They've only won one of 4 at home. They lost to Japan, but then tied Indonesia and Bahrain. And they would have needed to win those home games to see themselves a little bit further up the standings.
Yeah, that's right. And ultimately, well, their only loss on the road has been Indonesia. Indonesia, I think the pot 6 team here, who are performing well, but being bested by Indonesia is not a great thing. Really, I think they're going to need to win that game against Australia to do well here. Even Bahrain away is a tough match.
Yeah.
And I believe those ones take place just before the World Cup also. So this will be a busy period for Saudi Arabia. 2 important games in World Cup qualifying, and then flying over to America for the Gold Cup shortly after.
Yeah, lots of games, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and pretty tough one. So, maybe that will factor in actually playing tough games and then flying. That might have an influence. We'll maybe bring that up in the conversation. But we are ready to move on to part 3 here, and we'll begin with the pots and rankings.
Yeah, so the USA is actually the out of the 4 pot 1 team, they're the lowest ranked by CONCACAF's calculation. Haiti is also the lowest ranked of the pot 2 teams. Trinidad is second out of the pot 3 teams. And then Saudi Arabia is an anomaly. They're automatically placed in pot 4, but they would have a much higher FIFA ranking than Curacao and Dominican Republic, even than Suriname, who are a pot 3 team. So the invited guest thing and not including their kind of ranking in the calculation does create a bit of an anomaly among pot 4 teams. And on the face of it, you'd think being drawn with Saudi Arabia would be the toughest of the pot 4 teams.
Yeah, definitely. So, USA and Haiti from the bottom of their pots does make this look like the weakest team. But as you say, Saudi Arabia quite a bit stronger than any of the other pot 4 teams. I think Haiti is a bit unlucky to be drawn with the invited guests for 2 tournaments in a row.
Yeah, definitely. It does make it tougher. You'd probably rather Guadeloupe than Saudi Arabia, for sure. And it really, they're not a pot 4 team. It's an interesting way of doing it. You can kind of see why they do it, but it does kind of automatically be a disadvantage for whichever teams are drawn against.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, having said that, Haiti did beat Qatar in the last cup, but then Qatar took the advancing spot. So not a joy to be drawn against the invited guests. Let's take a look at the rankings. In my mind, I'm trying to kind of fit in Saudi Arabia into CONCACAF and see kind of where they land in CONCACAF. This will help us.
Yeah, so the USA is 16th in FIFA rankings and 34th in ELO, so quite a discrepancy there. Haiti is 86th in FIFA and 75th in ELO. So quite a discrepancy actually between the pot 1 and 2 teams. Trinidad and Tobago was just under 100th in both systems, 102nd and 109th. And then Saudi Arabia is 59th in FIFA ranking, so that puts them several spots above Haiti, though their ELO ranking has them 75th, so actually the same with Haiti, but both quite far behind the United States.
Right, so that's pretty interesting that they're at the exact same level as Haiti. Is your impression matching that?
It's not. I think the FIFA rankings I would defer to here. I think Saudi Arabia get to test themselves against kind of tougher opponents more so than Haiti. So no, I would probably say Saudi Arabia, who are a good team in Asia, would I would consider them stronger, but
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question, though, is a big discrepancy between FIFA having USA as the top team in CONCACAF right now. CONCACAF themselves and ELO have USA as fourth behind Mexico, Canada, and Panama. Where do you land on that?
Well, they finished fourth behind those other 3 teams you mentioned in the most recent Nations League. So I guess that is some evidence of it. I don't think the USA are at a period of historical strength right now. Perhaps Mexico aren't either, whereas Canada and Panama are. So I think it's kind of interesting. I think we're used to thinking of CONCACAF as an undisputed first and second, being USA and Mexico in some order. So I think the interesting thing is whether they're first or fourth. The fact is there's more competitive teams at the top end of CONCACAF than we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, that's right. But anyway, that's not so much an issue until the final rounds when they start meeting those teams. But we'll get into that. I am jumping ahead of myself a bit because we're supposed to just objectively analyze the teams here before the discussion. Let's take a look at the head-to-head record, beginning with USA versus Haiti.
Yes, USA has a better record. 5 wins, 1 draw, but 2 defeats to Haiti, though those 2 defeats were a while ago.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a bit lost in my thing. Yes, those 2 defeats coming way back in the 1970 World Cup qualifications. So hitting Haiti at their strong point and USA at their weak point. Otherwise, USA quite dominant in this head-to-head. USA and I'm going to ask you before we move on, how many times do you think USA have met Trinidad and Tobago?
Maybe a few more than Haiti. I know Trinidad have been in some more final rounds of qualification.
All right, I won't torment you further, but I'm shocked by the number of times they've met here.
Yeah, my goodness, 25. USA has won 19. That's left 3 draws for Trinidad and Tobago and also 3 victories.
Right, but actually one of Trinidad and Tobago's wins there was in the 2023-24 CONCACAF Nations League quarterfinal, as we saw. America had won the first game by a wide margin, so maybe relaxed a little bit too much there in Trinidad and Tobago. But, the most famous meeting between them.
Yeah, the 2018 World Cup qualifying.
Yeah, and I said I think America has thrashed them twice since. That's true in the group stage of the 2019 Copa America, and in the 2023 Gold Cup, they beat them 6 times, punishing them for that 2018 World Cup. Okay, let's move on. These teams haven't met Saudi Arabia that much, but surprisingly, the US and Saudi Arabia have met in competition.
Yeah, it was a victory for the United States. Do you want to tell us about that?
That was a 1999 Confederations Cup. That might have been a little bit before the Confederations Cup was really known as as an international tournament. You'd be surprised how many of these cups actually come out of Saudi Arabia or the Middle East. The Arab Cup, now becoming kind of a FIFA competition, came out of the Middle East, and so did the Confederations Cup. But given that they met USA in this one, it might have been actually at the time the Confederations Cup became a competition. But we got to remember USA really just at the beginning of their ascendancy in terms of the world here, and they won that 2-0 over Saudi Arabia. An interesting point in history for those two to be meeting. Haiti and Saudi Arabia, do you think they have met?
I don't think they have.
Right, they have not met. I can't imagine a circumstance where they would meet. We move on, though, to Trinidad and Tobago versus Haiti, both of those Caribbean teams. So, of course, they've met quite a bit.
And it's very even. There's 3 draws, but aside from that, it's Trinidad and Tobago with 9 wins and Haiti with 8.
That's right. And 2 of those meetings were in Caribbean Cup finals. Trinidad Tobago won in 2001, and Haiti beat Trinidad and Tobago in their only Caribbean Cup win in 2007. So a lot of history inside the region. And finally, Trinidad and Tobago versus Saudi Arabia.
No history.
No history. I guess the 2006 World Cup would have been the only possibility there. All right. Well, we do like to look at the odds, not because we're gamblers, but because we like to know what the odds makers are thinking. Unfortunately, we weren't able to find odds for this tournament. And so do you have any speculations on who you think, on what the odds would be?
Well, I think the USA, I mean, they kind of win every other time. They're actually, if you follow the historical pattern of the USA winning and not, they're due for a win. So their odds would be high. I don't know the others would be tremendously high, but maybe an outside chance for Haiti or Saudi Arabia, but pretty outside, I would think.
Okay, well, let's go back then to our FIFA odds and maybe start with those. You seem pretty positive about the USA. Not that I have anything against the USA soccer team, but I'm a bit cynical about their chances here. First of all, because I completely disagree with FIFA. I think they're nowhere near first in the region right now. I think fourth is pretty accurate. So that would put them in the semifinals at best. But I just did the players podcast for the USA, and oh my goodness, Connor, so many injured players, so many of their 18 players going to be probably at the Club World Cup. I said in that mediacast that I think the Club World Cup takes precedence over the Gold Cup. Do you know?
I think for a lot of players, I mean, ultimately they're under contract to their clubs and they go and play international. So if they're under contract, and there are a number of American teams competing,
yeah,
it puts them in a difficult spot. As a country, USA can call upon a whole host of players, but clubs are limited by who's on their squad. So I imagine that we'll see some of those players playing in the Club World Cup and not the Gold Cup.
Yeah, well, I moaned in that media cast about it being quite self-contradictory of FIFA to be promoting kind of a club tournament over an international tournament. Usually they're fighting with clubs to force them to release players to international tournaments. I don't want to go too far into that, but what do you make of the Club World Cup?
Well, it's odd, and the USA is actually going to be hosting both tournaments simultaneously. It's a very bizarre position that they find themselves in. to try and be promoting the Gold Cup, which they've hosted for many years, but also have this other kind of big, glitzy, high-profile tournament. It's just a very odd thing. And when I first found out that they were kind of going on at the same time, I couldn't really believe it. But
yeah.
There you go.
But getting back to the matter at hand, I think the USA is paying a much heavier price than other teams. As you said, I think three of their teams involved. Seattle, Inter Miami is hosting. And between when I did the USA podcast and now, LAFC has beaten the Mexican team. So they're going to be there too. But of course, it's a lot of the European teams that their top players play for, and they're just losing a hatful of players to that. On top of these so many injuries, you should listen to the short version of that because it's just stunning. I would say 4 or 5 injuries just in the last couple of weeks alone. I almost began to wonder if the players just don't want to go to the Cup.
Yeah. Wow.
Anyway, the outcome of it is that the USA will not be sending anything close to their A team. They'll be struggling to find players for their B team. So I think in this discussion, we should be talking about USA not in their traditional form. In fact, they sent a B team in 2021 and in 2023, so it's becoming a bit of a tradition now. But do you think USA's A team would win this? Oh, sorry, B team would win this group?
Well, their B team did win the tournament in 2021, so I guess we have to give them that. I think in this group, yes, I would still think the USA could win it. The big problem for the USA is not kind of raw capability; it's the kind of alarming regularity they're being hit with upsets and shock defeats. Some of those on the road, like to Trinidad and Tobago, but some of those at home. They have the advantage of basically playing all internationals other than World Cups, and even that now, at home, and losing to Panama, to Canada, to other teams at home. They're certainly prone to it, and even in the World Cup qualification for 2020, for the 2022 World Cup, there were lots of poor results against teams they should be beating. So it's no longer a given that the USA rolls over teams. I think they should win this group, but there's been a lot of unpredictable results for the United States recently. So you kind of have to expect that a little bit here, I would say.
Yeah. Just one note on the home advantage there. I'm sure American fans would be railing to tell us now that often the crowd at the away games for those teams are often bigger and louder than the support for the American team. So geographically, they are home games. In a lot of cases, though, they almost feel more like away games, or at least neutral territory. The crowd is not kind of loudly on USA's side. So in fairness to that, but we go back to the Copa America in 2024, and that kind of plays into what you're saying. We expected them to get out of that group. I think they were the pot 1 team. They're playing against Panama and then 2 fairly weak South American teams. Was it, or was Uruguay one of them?
Uruguay was strong, and then Bolivia.
Right.
Yeah,
but they were really disappointed to not get out of that group. And that group kind of reminds me of this group where they should get out of it. But with a B team, I'm not dead sure that they will. It could be another very disappointing campaign for USA. I'm just saying I don't think it's guaranteed that they'll advance.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly see it more than likely, but I do see stumbles along the way. Maybe kind of building on your point, do you see all 4 teams as possibly advancing, or is there anyone who do you feel would be likely to finish ahead of the United States if that were to happen?
Well, certainly not Trinidad and Tobago. I kind of put them firmly at the bottom of this group. They usually go out in the group stage. I feel like the Gold Cup is a little bit rich for them. They do have kind of spurts where they do well and pass the group stage, but for the most part, they're kind of struggling once they reach this level. Haiti have very talented players. They just don't always seem to put things together. And I really like Haiti. I'm always kind of a bit disappointed that whether it's luck, like we saw with them being paired with Qatar last time and with Saudi Arabia here, they're a little bit unlucky, or maybe they kind of lack confidence or self-belief or something. They have a good opportunity here, I think, but they don't always get it done. I'll just turn it over to you because I feel like I'm talking too much here.
No, I think I do agree with you with Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, they came in as a pot 3 team. I think had they met a regular pot 4 team, they might have won. In their last Gold Cup, they beat St. Kitts and Nevis in that exact situation, but were overwhelmed by both USA and Jamaica. So I feel Trinidad is kind of perhaps the largest sufferers of having Saudi Arabia as their pot 4 team. I don't see Trinidad really, getting more than a point here. I do still think the USA will probably win the group just because there are doubts about Haiti, like you mentioned, and Saudi Arabia too. You raise a really good point with them coming off 2 crucial World Cup qualifiers and then flying right here. Those qualifiers for the World Cup are going to have to take a bit of precedence.
Yeah.
So maybe they'll be good warm-ups, but I think there's some doubts there. So the USA, I think, will have enough to advance and probably win the group. I do see it as relatively close between Saudi Arabia and Haiti. You're right, Haiti's just a bit inconsistent. So it kind of depends what Haiti team we see. But, Saudi Arabia, I do put stock, even though their ELO rankings are the same, I do put stock in the higher FIFA ranking.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of disagree with you there. It's really interesting that they're both rated exactly 75th in ELO. But as you say, FIFA has Saudi Arabia a bit higher. I do think actually Saudi Arabia is a slightly better team than Haiti. It's just that I wonder, especially after those World Cup qualifiers, will Saudi Arabia be sliding into tackles with 100% commitment for this tournament, which is basically a friendly for them. Whereas Haiti may see this as a great opportunity, especially with a weakened American team, to at least advance from the group stage. I think they'll be playing a bit harder.
Yeah. We should also mention that Al Hilal, which are the top team in Saudi Arabia, will be competing in the Club World Cup, and there's a number of players that play there.
That's really interesting. I haven't done the Saudi Arabia players yet, so definitely something I'll have to keep tabs on.
Yeah. Do you think the Saudi Arabia domestic league will the higher profile that will kind of boost the national team as maybe sometimes happens?
I think Al Hilal have done well in the Asian version of the Champions League, the Asian Champions League. I have followed it at times. I don't have it in my head. I should say we call this podcast the Soccer Files, as in soccer library, because I don't have all the information in my head, but I do have it in my files. But I do believe Al Hilal has done well, and I don't know exactly what you mean though by boosting the Saudi team.
Well, sometimes when the domestic league is strengthened, that has a knock-on effect on the national team. Players are playing more competitive matches and stuff. So, I mean, obviously Saudi Arabia, they're hosting a World Cup 2034, I believe. So they've got a bit of work to do. Qatar put in quite meticulous preparation. They didn't really show it at the World Cup, but they won 2 Asian Cups. So that preparation for hosting really did have an impact on them. So Saudi Arabia, I think, will be building towards that. This is kind of far from their World Cup. So again, I'm not sure how seriously they'll take it. But a good run. Getting out of the group is probably, good for them. And then, seeing who they meet from there. But yeah, they will have a tough opponent in Haiti for sure. That'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I do think it could give them confidence if their international teammates are doing well in the Club World Cup. But again, I just kind of have the feeling that this is just a bit of summer fun for Saudi Arabia. I don't mean that insultingly, but I don't think they'll be as determined to do well in the tournament as, say, Haiti and USA's B team. Here, all in all, though, I do see potentially anything happening here other than Trinidad and Tobago winning the group, Trinidad and Tobago advancing from the group.
Yeah, we'll see. I tend to agree. I do think maybe I'd probably rate the USA's chances of winning the group a little bit higher than yours. But I'm going to say Saudi Arabia second and Haiti third and Trinidad and Tobago last.
All right. Well, I may have been making too much of it because the USA have a huge talent pool. But what I did notice with the 2023 Gold Cup is that, the players they brought to that cup didn't end up being kind of B team players the way I expected them to be. I thought we'd see a lot of those players kind of as substitutes for the A team and maybe getting onto the field, and a few of them did, but there are a lot of those players who just played in the Gold Cup and haven't been called up for an international tournament since. So it's very kind of up in the air for me as to who the USA is going to call. If it is kind of the leftovers from the A team, the ones who aren't injured or involved in the cup, or even the B team players who are substitutes for the main, because they always send an A team to any game that has an involvement, if you know what I mean, any game other than a friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And even some of the friendlies they send their A team to, but they it's almost like I kind of worry that the team they send here will be almost like a different country of several players who have never played before, or perhaps the players who are in the World Cup in 2023. I think it's going to be very difficult for Pochettino to kind of develop a team out of that. So I do think USA will pass this group stage, but I don't think it'll be an easy tournament for them. And maybe we should, unless you want to speak a little bit more to that, let's talk about how far these teams can go into the tournament. Do you see any of them as semi-finalists, for example?
I think whoever wins a group has a good chance of going onto the semifinals, and that's just in CONCACAF. There are probably, the pot one teams are quite strong, and the pot two teams, there's a bit of a step down. So if anyone can win the group, or if Saudi Arabia or Haiti could win the group, then they definitely have a chance at the semifinals. Out of these teams, I see the USA as the only one with a chance at getting into the final, but perhaps they go out at the quarterfinal stage too. I think a lot's up in the air for them. Pochettino's a high-profile manager. He was brought in to win things, but it hasn't gone that well for him so far. Even with the Nations League. So, it's a bit up in the air.
Yeah, it's a bit up in the air, and in a way, I wouldn't call this the most difficult group, but I would call it the most dark horse of a group, because the USA, we don't really know what squad they're going to bring to the cup. Saudi Arabia, we don't really know how they fit into CONCACAF and how they'll fare against CONCACAF teams. And even if we say like Trinidad and Tobago, all of their successes have been kind of one-off things that just kind of popped up. So if they happen to have a good tournament, it's possible, although I really doubt it. I don't know if I'm brave enough to predict here, because I think that USA, Haiti, and Saudi Arabia, to me, seem quite even if we're talking about, maybe a group of American players who haven't really played together.
Yeah.
Okay, you're not going to pin me down beyond that. Great.
What do you say? What do you say?
You are going to pin me down
I
to
will.
that?
Since you taunted me.
I'm going to say that I think someone else is going to win the group. I think with the USA's character, what I think might happen is that they do get a bit of a shock in the group stage, and that kind of binds them together a little bit. But I think they'll be a bit disorganized at first, so may struggle in the first couple of games. So I'm going to go with my heart here and say Haiti. Haiti is going to win the group with USA. No, I don't even know what I'm talking about here. I really see them as all even.
Okay, we'll leave it
Yeah,
at
that. I can't do it. All right. Well, maybe I should go to the graphic here for our closing. And great talking to you about this, Connor. I've enjoyed doing these media casts with you on the group. And let's finish by asking, who do you think is going to win the tournament? A great opportunity maybe for some of the lesser teams.
Yeah, it would be great to see. I think Canada and Panama have as good a chance as they've had in a long time to maybe win this tournament. They don't have the history in it. I'm going to say Mexico.
Yeah, I was gonna go there myself. I don't think Mexico are losing a lot of players to the Gold Cup. To the FIFA Club World Cup or to injury, and they have come into good form with Jimenez refinding a bit of form. So I think, yes, Canada and Panama will see this as a good opportunity. Haiti may see it as a good opportunity to pass the group stage if the USA does bring a weakened team, but Mexico's always there to take advantage of these things. And, they may be kind of eyeing up this competition and saying, let's send our best. Why not? They often do. The only time Mexico has sent a B team to tournaments is when they have two tournaments in the same summer,
Well, let me ask you this. If it's not Mexico or the US and we get a break to that pattern, who do you like as a potential winner? Would it be Jamaica, Canada, Panama, Costa Rica, Haiti?
Yeah, I would love to say Canada, although I'm fearful that they're going to not take advantage of the opportunity and send a B team themselves. So I really don't think Panama will do that. I think they'll be smart enough to see this as a great opportunity, given the form that they're in. They reached the final of the Nations League Cup there. So if it's not Mexico or USA, I would actually pick Panama for this one, although I'd love for it to be Canada.
Yeah.
How about you?
I would say Canada. I'll go with my heart here. I know they're going to be missing players. I know that they have some high-profile withdrawals and injuries, but why not? Anything can happen.
Why not? And I gotta say, I hope you're right and I'm wrong. All right, let's bring this to a close and keep your eyes and ears out for the Players podcast. We're just kind of moving on to part 2 for each of the teams, where we'll actually see who made the final squad, and we'll be particularly interested in the USA there, given what they're facing, but also whether Canada and other teams are going to be sending an A team to this tournament. I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
All right. Well, the tournament will be fun as always, and thanks for doing this.
Okay. See you next time.
Bye.
We would like to thank Future Babes for the wonderful music you hear in this podcast. The title is called Hello.